Some lands are made of sand and silence, but beneath the dunes old empires sleep, and their whispers still drift on desert winds. Once south of Egypt, along the slow breath of the Nile, there rose a kingdom called Kush, an African power, of black stone pyramids and gold-laden rivers. They traded ivory and incense, wove fabrics of power and faith, and built temples that caught the rising sun. For nearly 1,000 years, they rivaled Egypt, and for a time, they ruled it. Kushite pharaohs, their crowns dark and gleaming, sat upon the throne of the Nile. They called themselves the Black Pharaohs, and their cities, Meroe and Lapita, rang with music, metallurgy, and queens who led armies with wisdom and fire. But time, like sand, never stays still. Trade routes shifted, empires fractured, and the stones of Kush crumbled into quiet. Now in modern Sudan, the pyramids remain, sharp against the blue sky, silent but never forgotten, because Kush tells us that Africa's heart once beat like thunder, and its legacy still echoes in every carved stone and every story the wind carries. There is a place where deserts shimmer and oases bloom like dreams, where the earth cracks open secrets older than memory. In the heart of Central Asia, where Turkmenistan's sands kiss Afghanistan's mountains, rose a forgotten world, Bactria, Margiana. 4,000 years ago, they built citadels of clay and palaces of mud brick, wells deep as stories, and temples shaped like stars. They spun fine textiles, crafted gold that caught the dawn, and carved seals etched with mythical beasts. Their merchants wandered far, linking Mesopotamia, the Indus Valley, and the early steppes. This was a crossroad long before the Silk Road, a meeting of minds, metals, and myths. But as rivers dried and sands crept in, the cities grew hollow, and by 1700 BCE, the light dimmed. For centuries, they were a whisper lost in dust, until archaeologists, digging deep in Gornotepe and beyond, unearthed walls, jewelry, and painted pots that spoke again. Bactria, Margiana reminds us, between East and West, civilization flowed freely, ideas mingled, and beauty bloomed in the harshest places. Their silence today is not absence, it's an invitation to wonder. Where mountains roll into Adriatic waves, the Illyrians once walked, proud and untamed. They rose from the land of modern Albania, Croatia, Bosnia, and Montenegro, a mosaic of tribes woven by language, blood, and battle. They built hill forts on high ridges, stone walls kissed by sky, and lived where forests whispered secrets to the wind. Masters of metal, they shaped bronze and iron into swords that gleamed like twilight, their jewelry spirals of silver, coiled like time itself. They traded with Greeks, fought with Romans, and sailed swift ships that cut through the Adriatic like shadows. Their warriors were fierce, painted, tattooed, moving as one beneath the banners of forgotten clans. But in 167 BC, Rome came. The Illyrian kingdoms fell. Their names faded into Latin lore and marble roads, yet their spirit lingers in crumbling fortresses, buried helmets, and the language roots still echoing in Balkan hills. The Illyrians remind us even broken empires leave fingerprints on the stones, and forgotten tribes shape the soil beneath our feet. Before the pyramids rose in Egypt, before Stonehenge touched the sky, Caral stirred by Peru's desert shores. Here the Supe River cut through sand and salt, and people gathered to build a quiet marvel. No kings carved in stone, no armies marched in dust, yet pyramids rose, 6 sacred mounds of woven reed and earth, breathing music into the wind. They gathered in sunken plazas, their voices soft, flutes of condor bone, singing ancient songs. Cotton fields bloomed beside the river, traded for fish caught from Pacific tides. They spun nets, wove textiles, and mapped stars before history had a name. Their temples faced the mountains, their stairways spiraled into the clouds, and their peace endured for centuries. No signs of war, no broken spears, only harmony etched in stone and soil. Then, around 1800 BC, the river shifted, the winds changed, Caral's plazas emptied, and silence fell where music once breathed. Yet Norte Chico endures, in ruins kissed by desert winds, and in the quiet truth, civilization was born not from conquest, but from cotton, trade and song. In the shadow of Mesopotamia's myths, beyond the roar of Sumer's rivers, Elam whispered its name in the highlands of Iran. Before Persia, before Cyrus, Elam's brick temples rose, Susa shimmered, a city older than empires, its walls glazed in turquoise dreams. Kings wore horned crowns, and queens commanded courts with elegance etched on clay tablets and silver cups. They mastered writing, an Elamite script, separate from cuneiform's grip, whispering treaties and tales in symbols lost to time. Their artisans cast bronze statues, crafted jewelry kissed by lapis, and wove myths of gods fierce and proud. Yet wars brewed with Akkad, Babylon, Assyria. Elam fell, rose, and fell again, its heart beating defiant against mighty neighbors. By 539 BC, the Achaemenid Persians came. Elam's name faded into Persian stone, its language silenced but not erased. Today, Susa's ruins sleep beneath Iran's sun, but the Elamites endure as the bridge between Mesopotamia's dawn and Persia's golden dusk, a forgotten kingdom that taught empires how to build, how to write, how to endure storms of steel and sand. Beneath Africa's highland skies, where the red soil kissed the clouds, Aksum rose, a titan carved in stone. Before the rise of Ethiopia, Aksum ruled trade routes from Nile to Arabian sands, from Indian Ocean waves to Roman ports afar. Ivory, gold, frankincense. Aksum's treasures sailed as obelisks soared, piercing blue skies like fingers of granite prayers. Kings bore the title, King of Kings, minting coins of silver and gold, the first in sub-Saharan Africa. Then, a whisper echoed, the cross. Aksum embraced Christianity by the 4th century, long before Europe's kings knelt. Cathedrals rose, and legends bloomed, of the Ark of the Covenant, hidden within Aksum's walls. Caravans came, merchants bowed, as Aksum stood proud, a beacon of faith and power. But tides shifted, Hall's Islamic trade routes veered, and Aksum's harbors faded. By the 10th century, the kingdom dimmed, its voice echoing in ruins. Yet today its obelisks still stand, its crosses still gleam, and its legacy shapes modern Ethiopia's soul. Aksum was not merely a kingdom, it was an empire that linked continents, blended faiths, and carved eternity into African stone. Across the endless Pacific, a culture sailed the stars. The Lapita people, masters of the open sea, navigated waters unknown. From 1600 BC to 500 BC, their journey stretched from Melanesia to Samoa, crafting their world with every wave. They left more than footprints, pottery, red, smooth, intricate, with stamped patterns, a language of the earth and sea. Ceramics scattered across islands, marking their path, a story told in clay. They forged the foundation of Oceania's future. Polynesian, Micronesian, Melanesian, cultures rooted in their hands. They sailed with obsidian, crafted tools, built homes on stilts, and honored ancestors with art. But their distinct pottery, their legacy, faded by 500 BC. Some sailed east, others merged into new shores, their mark dissolving into the ocean's embrace. Why does it matter? They were the pioneers, the explorers of the Pacific, the first to sow the seeds of island nations. The Lapita were not just a people, they were a legend of the sea. In the mists of northern Britain, where stone meets sky, the Picts arose, warriors veiled in mystery. From the 3rd to the 10th century AD, their lands stretched wide, Scotland's rugged hills, its crags and rivers, their kingdom carved in shadow. They were the painted people, their bodies inked in blue, symbols of power, of clan and spirit. Roman scribes whispered their name, fearing their swift raids, their defiance at Hadrian's wall. Unconquered, untamed, they ruled their wild domain. They sculpted their story on towering stones, Pictish symbol stones, beasts, spirals, warriors etched in silent code. We cannot read their script, but the carvings speak still, of faith, of kings, of war and peace. Their clans thrived, farming, trading, weaving a culture rich and bold. But by the 10th century they faded, folded into the emerging Scots, their name vanishing, yet their stones remaining, watchful sentinels of the past. Why does it matter? The Picts were the soul of ancient Scotland's birth. They resisted Rome. They shaped kingdoms, and though their language is lost, their legacy is etched in stone, forever whispering through the highlands. Across the rivers of ancient Ohio, between 100 BC and 500 AD, the Hopewell rose, a people of earth and sky, in eastern North America. Not a single empire, but linked tribes, woven together by trade, by ceremony, by cosmic wonder. They built with the land, mounds vast and sweeping, geometric giants, circles, squares, serpents winding. Earthworks aligned to stars, to solstice and eclipse, a silent calendar of soil. Even now, they defy full understanding. Trade flowed like rivers, copper from the Great Lakes, mica from Appalachia, obsidian from the Rockies. A web stretched across continents, goods and ideas exchanged, from far horizons to Hopewell hearths. They crafted finely, pipes carved like birds, ornaments of shimmering mica, intricate pottery, art that echoed life and spirit, ceremonial feasts, elaborate burials, their mounds cradle both ruler and rite. By 500 AD, they waned, their mounds silent, their trade paths dimmed. Why they faded, we do not know, but their earthworks endure, whispers in the landscape, testaments of vision and of cosmic reach. Why does it matter? The Hopewell wove one of history's earliest long-distance networks, bridging cultures long before modern maps. Their earthworks speak of genius, of ritual, and of a North America far older than we dream. On Peru's arid coast, between 100 and 700 AD, the Moche flourished, a civilization of sand and sky, where rivers carved life into the desert's edge. Masters of engineering, they tamed dry lands, with canals that breathed green into gold dunes. Their temples rose like mountains, the Huaca del Sol, the Huaca de la Luna, pyramids of adobe brick, millions stacked by hand. Here they painted the gods, here they bled for them too, in rituals fierce and blood-soaked offerings. The Moche spoke through clay pottery so vivid it whispers still. Warriors in helmets, priests with fanged masks, lovers entwined, animals in motion, their stirrup vessels captured life and death, and everything between. They ruled not as one empire, but as valley lords, linked by faith, by shared art, by sacred ceremony. Their warriors battled for captives, for sacrifice, to feed the gods and turn the seasons. By 700 AD, their world cracked. El Niño storms drowned fields, droughts followed, cities crumbled. The Moche faded, but their legacy lingered, in pottery shards, in temple ruins, in echoes across Andean time. Why do they matter? The Moche crafted visions of power, of cosmos, etched in clay and blood. They show us a civilization where art, religion, and warfare dance together beneath desert stars. In the heart of India, where Deccan's hills breathe, the Vakatakas rose, circa 250 AD. As Satavahanas faded, they claimed the throne, spreading from Maharashtra's folds to the edges of Madhya Pradesh, a dynasty veiled in time, yet bold in spirit. They ruled not alone, but in kinship and alliance, marriages with Guptas, blood tied to empires. Pravarasena Eri, their mightiest king, claimed sacrifices of fire, 4 horse-drawn yanas, his banners kissed by Sanskrit hymns and Brahmanic rites. Yet, the Vakatakas were not just swords, they were patrons of beauty. Ajanta's caves, those painted sanctuaries, whisper their name. Under Haroshena, the chisel danced, the brush sang, Buddhist tales bloomed on stone and wall. They blended worlds, Shaivism and Buddhism, royal power and spiritual grace. Land grants flowed to Brahmins and monks. Temples rose, scripture spread in copperplate and palm leaf, their legacy etched deep. By the 5th century's turn, their star dimmed, their territories splintered, absorbed by the rising Chalukyas, but Ajanta's frescoes remain, immortal hues on basalt canvas, testimony of kings who saw art as empire eternal. Why do they matter? The Vakatakas built bridges between faiths, between dynasties, between sword and scripture. Their story is soft yet strong, like lotus blooming on the Deccan stone. In Anatolia's cradle, where Asia and Europe kiss, the Hittites rose, circa 1600 BC. From Hattusa's stone heart, they forged an empire, chariots rumbling across sun-baked plains, scripts carved in cuneiform, treaties sealed in clay. They tamed the Bronze Age with iron dreams and thunder gods. Kings wore twin crowns of war and law. Jupilulima, Kens, bold and shrewd, broke Mitanni's chains, stood tall before Egypt. Their diplomats wove webs, their scribes inked codes. The first peace treaty known, with Ramses II, etched their name into eternity's scroll. They were masters of craft, ironsmiths before their time. Walls rose thick around Hattusa's gates, Lion Gate, King's Gate, silent sentinels of might. Tablets spoke of laws, of property and kings, a bureaucracy both sharp and vast. By 1200 BC, the sea peoples came, tremors shook empires, and the Hittites fell. Hattusa burned, its stones blackened, its records buried beneath Anatolian soil. Yet echoes linger, in tablets and treaties, of a people who shaped the Bronze Age's spine. Why do they matter? They bridged east and west, crafted diplomacy's first threads, forged iron before time, and sang hymns to gods of wind and storm. Their legacy, half hidden, half sung, still shapes our ancient tales. On Korea's Emerald Peninsula, Silla was born in 57 BC, a kingdom of gold and granite, where mountains whispered secrets and temples kissed the sky. From Gyeongju's heart, they rose, one of the 3 kingdoms. Their banners fluttered with tiger grace, while scholars penned Confucian dreams and shamans danced beneath jade moons. Crowned by kings of silk and steel, Silla forged alliances, first with Goguryeo, then, clever and bold, they clasped Tang China's hand. By 668 AD, they unified the land. A golden age dawned, with pagodas and poetry, bronze bells tolled, and Buddhist chants echoed through stone grottos. The So-Garam Grotto, a cave of serenity, holds Buddha's gaze even now. They spun gold like no other, the crowns of Silla, diadems of pure splendor, dangling jade and gold, crafted with finesse unseen. Buddhism flourished, silk roads flowed, artisans carved and monks studied. Gyeongju glittered as a city of scholars and sages, its tombs vast, its relics rich. Yet all kingdoms fade, and so did Silla. By 935 AD, its crown slipped, swallowed by Goryeo rise. But Silla's breath lingers, in stone pagodas, in golden crowns, in stories sung of unity and art, where kings and monks once walked under plum blossoms fall. It shaped Korea's soul, united realms, and painted history in gold and stone. A kingdom that rose on diplomacy and devotion, whose echoes still murmur in Korea's hills and hearts. In O'Oka's valley cradle, the Zapotecs awoke, circa 700 BC, where mountains embraced and clouds kissed soil. Fonte Alban rose, a city on a spine, cut from stone, where temples touched stars, and bull courts echoed ancient cheers. Their glyphs danced on walls, one of Mesoamerica's oldest scripts, etched in time, whispers carved in stone. Zapotec lords ruled high, as nobles gazed from mountaintop thrones. Astronomers mapped skies, priests read stars, and artisans molded clay gods. Their calendar turned, with sun and shadow, marking life and afterlife. Tombs painted deep crimson held jade, shell, and gold, where ancestors slept, guarding secrets in burial mounds beneath Monte Alban's gaze. Masters of war and trade, they forged paths to the Olmecs, Maya, and Teotihuacan's glow. Cacao, obsidian, feathers, their gifts flowed through jungle veins. Yet their power waned. Monte Alban emptied, cities crumbled, as Mixtec shadows crept across the land. By 900 AD, their reign dimmed, but not erased. Why do we remember them? Their glyphs breathe still, their pyramids stand proud. Zapotecs crafted a mosaic of culture, art, language, faith, woven deep into Mexico's soul. A civilization that kissed clouds, spoke stars, and laid stone dreams on mountain thrones. In Oaxaca's wind, if you listen close, you'll hear Zapotec hearts drum still, their legacy stitched in temples, tombs, and the land itself, a story of rise, reign, and reverence. Beneath Yemen's burning skies, where incense clouds curled, the kingdom of Saba rose around 1200 BC, a realm of spice and gold, where frankincense trails whispered wealth and myrrh bled sweet resin onto desert winds. Marib, their stone-clad capital, gleamed with temples and canals carved life from sand and dust, a green jewel in a golden wasteland. The great dam of Marib, a marvel of ancient might, held rivers at bay, nourishing fields and palms. Sabaean merchants sailed caravans of camels, threads of silk and spice, binding Arabia to Africa, India to Rome. Their queens and kings, etched in inscriptions, stood proud, priestly and powerful, guardians of sun god Almaca's flame. Legends shimmer still, of a queen named Sheba, graceful and wise, who crossed sands to Solomon's court, bearing gold and riddles. Her journey, etched in Bible and Koran, cast Saba into myth's embrace. But history speaks louder, of trade, temples, and towering obelisks, where stone embraced the sky. By 275 AD, Saba's dam crumbled, its power ebbed as Himyarite kings rose. Temples fell silent, markets dimmed, and desert winds swept across ruins. Yet even now, amid Marib's shattered stones, you can taste incense in the air and hear camel bells echo through time. Saba, land of spice, queen of trade routes, mistress of riddles, a kingdom lost but never forgotten. Its fragrance lingers still, woven deep into history's breath. When the mighty Hittites fell, around 1180 BC, from their ashes rose Tuanua, a flicker of forgotten glory, nestled in Anatolia's embrace. Stone citadels stood firm, as iron swords gleamed anew. This Neo-Hittite kingdom, small yet proud, kept ancient tongues alive. Illyrian scripts carved deep into basalt stelae, whispers of gods, kings, and warriors, etched into eternity. They worshipped Tarunza, the storm god's roar, and Kubaba, queen of heaven's grace. Temples bloomed once more, where sacrifices rose into twilight skies. Tuanua's scribes preserved old myths, as chariots rolled on dusty roads linking city-states, where alliances tangled like threads on a loom. Their art sang of lions, eagles, and sun disks bright. Trade flowed still, silver, tin, and textiles, bartered with Phrygians, Assyrians, and Greeks, a crossroads of power, where East embraced West and memories of empire lingered in stone. But Assyria's shadow loomed. By the 8th century BC, Tuanua bent knee to Tiglath-Pileser's might, its independence crushed beneath iron boots, its kings faded into cuneiform lists. Yet, in Turkey's heart, among buried ruins, fragments of Tuanua breathe. Basalt lions guard silent gates, and Luwian glyphs still dance in scholars' dreams. A kingdom small but fierce with memory, a bridge between Hittite past and Assyrian dawn, where forgotten gods once thundered and whispered beneath Anatolia's skies. Beneath the Mekong's shimmering tides, Funan rose, Southeast Asia's cradle, around the 1st century AD, a realm where river met sea and trade winds whispered wealth. Harbors brimmed with spices and silk, ivory and gold, as merchants sailed from Rome to India, anchoring at Funan's bustling shores, where temples touched the sky and markets danced with tongues unknown. Here, the Indian touch wove deep. Sanskrit scripts and Hindu gods graced palaces and shrines alike. The kings of Funan bore Indian titles, yet carved a world of their own, a blend of East and further East, where Brahmins mingled with local lords, and Vedic chants echoed through lush rice paddies and lotus-laden streams. Metalwork shimmered, craftsmanship flourished, a golden age unwrapped. They built canals to tame the floods, engineered roads that bound kingdoms tight, their fingers stretching from Vietnam's delta to the edges of Thailand's green. The Chinese chroniclers spoke their name, noting embassies rich and grand, and rulers shrewd in art and war. Yet power shifted, as rivers do, and by the 6th century's close, Funan's glory dimmed, overtaken by Chenla's rise. But Funan's shadow lingers still, in Angkor stones, in Khmer dreams, in trade routes etched in ancient maps, a vanished kingdom of crossroads and crowns, where ships, scripts, and stories met. Funan, the gateway of gold, whose ripples still touched by the Mekong's restless flow. In the heart of ancient Nigeria, the Nok rose, a whisper in clay, echoes of terracotta faces, born as early as 1500 BC, and vanishing by 500 AD, their hands molded stories, in sculptures so hauntingly bold, figures with almond eyes, intricate hairstyles, and enigmatic expressions, telling silent tales of ritual and power, of spirits and ancestors etched in fired earth. Iron smoldered in their furnaces, centuries before much of Africa knew its flame. They carved tools and weapons, from red soil and ore, a testament to their mastery, their brilliance buried deep. Villages thrived along the Jos Plateau, clusters of clay homes and busy hearths, where artisans, farmers and metalworkers wove together a society both simple and grand. No written words remain, only fragments of figurines, of pottery and iron, whispers left for us to wonder. Were these sculptures gods, or ancestors revered? Were they guardians of tombs, or symbols of rank and rule? Archaeologists still ponder, while the earth guards her ancient secrets close. The Nok vanished like a shadow at dusk, without a trace, but their art survived the soil, their terracotta legacy, a window into Africa's forgotten dawn. Here stands the Nok, masters of iron, sculptors of spirit, their silent clay faces still watching us today through time's crumbling veil. Where the Guadalquivir sighs into the sea, there breathed Tartessos, a land cloaked in myth and molten gold. By the 9th century BC, in southern Iberia's sunlit cradle, a kingdom shimmered, its fields rich with silver and copper, its hills veined with tin and treasure. Phoenician sails kissed its coasts, trading glass, purple dyes, and secrets of distant stars. Herodotus whispered their name, a people famed for wealth and lore, where King Arganthonios reigned, long-lived and wise, welcoming Greek mariners with open arms and laden tables. Their palaces rose with Eastern grace, their writing danced, a script lost to time, etched on stone and sherd, a voice silenced but never erased. They built with bronze-crafted jewelry of shimmering form, a fusion of Phoenician finery and Iberian soul. From salted fish to shining oars, Tartessos thrived as a hub of trade, a bridge between worlds, between the Pillars of Hercules and the endless Atlantic beyond. Their gods were many, their myths deep as their minds. But by the 6th century BC, the light dimmed fast. Perhaps Carthaginian shadows fell, or shifting sands buried their fame. Tartessos faded from scroll and song, its capital swallowed whole, its riches left to dreams and dust. Yet echoes linger, in Iberian gold, in Phoenician tales, and in every legend where lost cities gleam. Beneath the shadows of Mount Ararat, Urartu rose, a stone-forged realm of iron and flame. By the 9th century BC, across Lake Van's sapphire mirror, their fortresses crowned rugged peaks, walls stacked skyward, cyclopean and sure. They carved canals like silver veins, drawing water through mountains, crafting life from stone and dust. Arachne kings, like Sarduri and Menua, etched their glory on basalt walls. In cuneiform scripts, bold and sharp, they rivaled Assyria's might, standing defiant on high citadels, bronze-clad warriors, chariots, swift as wind, temples soared, dedicated to Haldi, their fierce god, guardian of war and kingship. Artisans shaped ivory and metal, golden griffins and lion-headed bowls, a fusion of steppe and Mesopotamian grace. Their language rang strange and proud, echoing through mountain valleys as caravans crossed passes, bearing wine, horses and iron-rich goods. Urartu, a kingdom of engineers, where every wall still whispers of precision and power. By the 6th century BC, Assyrian tides and Median storms cracked their towers and scattered their songs. Urartu vanished into Anatolia's stones, its name crumbled yet not forgotten. For Armenia's heart beats with its bones, its legacy etched in fortress ruins and ancient roads, a mountain kingdom as eternal as the peaks it crowned. In the heart of Central Asia's silk-laced sands, the Sogdians thrived, merchants of myth, masters of trade. From Samarkand's golden sprawl to Bukhara's bustling streets, they bridged empires, Persia to China, caravans, whispering secrets on silk roads, laden with spices, lapis lazuli, and dreams. They spoke Sogdian, a tongue of merchants, poets, and scribes etched on parchment, painted on murals vibrant and bold. Temples rose to Zoroastrian fire, while Mahayana scrolls and Nestorian gospels flowed freely in bazaars, where beliefs braided like silken threads. A cosmopolitan soul, the Sogdians danced on cultural crossroads. Artisans spun glass beads bright as stars, silver vessels shimmered with mythic beasts, their murals bloomed with banquets and parades, camels tall as ships of desert seas. Ambassadors and traders, they mapped the world not with swords but with contracts and caravans, their names echoing from Chang'an to Byzantium, dealmakers draped in patterned robes. Yet by the 8th century AD, Arab conquests cracked their towers, and new tides swept their silk-laden courts. Their cities dimmed, but their legacy sailed far, in scripts, in coins, in stories told from steppe to sea. The Sogdians, forgotten merchants of empires, still whisper on desert winds, where trade once shimmered like a mirage. Before Aksum's towers touched the sky, there rose Doomed, an ancient realm in the highlands of Eritrea and Ethiopia, where basalt stones met crimson earth, and kings carved power from jagged cliffs. From Yeha's proud temples, pillars soared to greet the sun, etched with South Arabian scripts, whispers of trade, and tales of divine kings. The land blossomed with iron and gold, forgers of blades and spears, heralding an age of metallurgy bold. Cattle grazed on lush plateaus, fields of sorghum danced in wind, and incense trails rose like prayers, carried to Sabaean merchants, across Red Sea's shimmering blue. Dumped was a bridge, linking Africa's cradle to Arabia's ancient thrones. Stone steinlay pierced the sky, guardians of tombs where rulers slept, their legacy silent yet unbowed. Priests lit fires to unknown gods, rituals lost in time's deep sands, and kings ruled as both sword and sage, weaving faith and power into one golden thread. A civilization on the cusp, waiting for history's next breath. By the 5th century BC, Dumped faded like mist on mountain peaks, its throne crumbled, its temples hushed. Yet from its roots the mighty Aksum would rise, a phoenix from basalt ashes, carrying Dump's legacy in stone, in faith, and in memory's quiet song. Before Rome's legions crossed the sea, the Cattivella Uni ruled the mists in Britain's ancient emerald lands, where rivers curved like silver snakes and oak forests whispered forgotten lore. Their warriors clad in patterned cloaks, with chariots wheeling on sacred soil, they carved a kingdom near modern Hertfordshire, a bastion bold, where iron met the dawn. Valamian, their heart and crown, a thriving hub of trade and power, gold coins shimmered in their grasp, stamped with horses and kings' proud names, testaments to wealth and might. Cassivellaunus, their fierce warlord, rose to meet Caesar's Roman march, leading tribes in unity, rare, his guerrilla blades cutting deep through empire's pride. Yet alliances cracked like ice, and Rome's shadow thickened. By the 1st century AD, the Cattivella Uni's kings, Tussiovanus and Cunobellinus, forged a realm grander still, stretching arms across southern Britain, balancing diplomacy and sword, trading with Gaul, while watching Rome's hungry eyes. But tides could not be held forever. Claudius's legions stormed the Isle, Verlamium fell, reborn as Verulamium, Roman hands on Cattivella Runi stone, yet their spirit lingered in place names and soil, in tales sung under British skies, a tribe that stood tall on the edge of empire, fading not in defeat, but in legacy's quiet glow. Before the Great Wall rose, before the emperors dreamed of silk, there was Liangzhu, a cradle of jade and water, nestled in China's misted Yangtze Delta. From 3,300 to 2300 BC, they built upon marsh and stream, their canals threading like glass veins, their homes perched on wooden stilts, dancing above the wetland's song. Masters of jade, they carved with patience of centuries, discs of beer Kong tubes spiraled with heaven's grace. Their hands etched mysteries in green stone, symbols of cosmos and kings, a glimpse of beliefs long faded, graves deep with offerings grand, hinted at rulers crowned in ritual, a stratified world, refined and wise. They shaped earthen walls and platforms vast, cityscapes rising from reed and clay, a prehistoric marvel of engineering craft. Their rice paddies spread like emerald mirrors, feeding thousands. Their artisans spun silk's early threads, while distant echoes of bronze still lay unborn. A society complex, quiet, and profound. And then, silence. Around 2300 BC, floodwaters surged, deltas drowned, and Liangzhu's brilliance washed away. Yet under Zhejiang's soil, their jade still sleeps, glimmering like lost starlight. They vanished, but their fingerprints remain upon China's cultural dawn, an empire before empires, whose legacy whispers through jade's cool sheen. Beneath the burning sun of Taklamakan, where sands shift like whispered secrets, lay Khotan, an emerald oasis, nestled on the Silk Road's breathless spine. From 4th century BC to 1000 AD, it flourished, a crossroads of silk and scripture, where monks met merchants, and caravans drank deep from its jade-laden streams. Khotan, the realm where silk was stolen, or so the legends hum, Chinese princess, seeds of mulberry hidden in her hair, whispers of sericulture smuggled west. It became a haven of Buddhist light, its stupas rising against the desert's glare, manuscripts blooming in Sanskrit and Khotanese, tales of Dharma spun between saffron robes and merchant gold. Jade flowed like rivers in trade, gleaming nephrite, harvested from Karakaj and Urankaj, polished smooth for emperors far east. Khotan's artisans crafted images of Buddha serene, scrolls inked in forgotten tongues, and carpets soft as desert dusk. It was a mosaic of Persian flair, Indian thought, and Chinese grace, a cultural alchemy under silk banners. But time, relentless and invasions cruel, drew curtains on Khotan's stage. The Karakhanid Turks swept in by 1006 AD. Islam's crescent rose where stupas once gleamed. Yet beneath Xinjiang's soil, in ancient Dandan Oilik and Yotkan ruins, fragments whisper still, of a kingdom lost to dunes, yet never to memory. Khotan, the jewel of silk and sand forever etched in the Silk Road's heart. Before the pyramids rose, before the walls of Babylon in the soft valleys of Ukraine, Moldova and Romania's rolling green, there blossomed a world, Cucuteni, Tripilia, circa 5500 to 2750 BC, where earth and fire danced in clay and hearth, a Neolithic masterpiece, forgotten, yet profound. They built with grace, vast settlements spiraled wide, some with thousands of souls, a proto-city sprawling the plains, homes painted in ochre and white, walls of wattle and daub kissed by flame, and in every corner, pottery, ornate as whispered dreams, spirals, waves, and swirling cosmos etched by steady hands. Their vessels sang stories, red, black, cream, curves, echoing life's cycle, fertility, cosmos, and death. Goddess figurines, broad-hipped and serene, cradled hopes of harvest and birth. They were artisans of spirit, farmers of the soul, growing wheat and barley as they sculpted myth into mud. And then, every 60 to 80 years they left. They burned their villages in sacred farewell, ritual ashes rising to cleanse the earth. Why, scholars still wonder. A migration of meaning, a cycle reborn. By 2750 BC, their spiral unwound, waves of Indo-Europeans, shifting climates, or mysteries unnamed swept them away. Yet deep beneath Europe's soil, shards remain, of a people who shaped clay like they shaped the cosmos. Cucuteni, Tripilia, the spiral that never dies. In the heart of ancient Nubia, along the winding Nile, rose the kingdom of Mercuria, a power that thrived from the 6th to the 14th century AD. Centered in Dongola, it stood as a Christian stronghold, where desert sands met Byzantine crosses, and monks carved prayers into red sandstone walls. Mercuria was no fragile frontier. It was a realm of kings and bishops, of stone cathedrals and fortified towns. Their greatest triumph, the defense against early Arab invasions. The Nubian archers, renowned for precision and speed, held back the Rashidun Caliphate, forcing a treaty of peace, the Bact, a pact that lasted nearly 600 years. Trade flourished through Mercuria's veins. Gold, ivory, and slaves moved along the Nile, while Coptic Christianity blended with Nubian traditions. In old Dongola, grand churches stood tall, with frescoes of saints painted in vivid ochres and blues, telling stories of faith in a land shaped by both desert and river. But time, as always, shifted. Internal strife, changing trade routes, and pressures from Egypt slowly weakened Mercuria's might. By the 14th century, its walls crumbled, its churches faded, and history's sands began to cover its name. Today, archaeologists uncover fragments of Mercuria's past, cathedrals buried, pottery scattered, and murals that still whisper of a forgotten Christian kingdom that once stood proud by the Nile. Long before the Inca in the highlands of Peru, the Wari Empire rose around 500 AD, stretching its reach across mountains, valleys, and coasts. Centered near modern Ayacucho, it built a networked civilization, with roads, terraces, and cities carved from stone, linking distant peoples under one banner. The Wari mastered administration. Their roads, precursors to the Inca highways, connected provinces. Central planners oversaw agriculture, using terraced fields and canal irrigation to tame the arid slopes. Wari cities were not sprawling capitals but tight, walled compounds carefully organized for control and order. Artisans thrived in Wari lands. They wove intricate textiles, painted vivid ceramics, and crafted wooden masks with geometric precision. Their religious life centered around deities inspired by earlier Tiwanaku beliefs, with temples and shrines dedicated to sky gods and ancestral spirits. As centuries passed, the empire's edges strained. By 1000 AD, the Wari's grip weakened, cities emptied, roads fell silent, and their political structure dissolved. Yet their legacy endured. in ideas, roads, and techniques later inherited by the mighty Inca. Today, Wari ruins stand quiet, from Picolacta to Vorocochapa. Their story, once hidden beneath Andean soil, is now unearthed, a reminder of a sophisticated power that shaped ancient Peru long before the empire we all remember. Before empires rose in Peru, there was Huarpa, from 200 BC to 500 AD, in the Ayacucho Valley. They built their world of stone settlements, of terraced fields, of sacred temples, set high in Andean air. They laid the roots for the Wari Empire to bloom. Huarpa farmers shaped the land, with irrigation canals feeding quinoa and maize. Their pottery spoke in colors, red, cream, and black, etched with geometric grace, simple yet elegant. Each shard whispers of skilled hands and communal life. Religion pulsed in their veins. Temples rose from earth aligned with stars to honor deities and ancestors. They gathered in plazas, where rituals danced and offerings fed the gods. Their beliefs, their symbols, carried forward into the Wari's might. Yet, all cultures shift, and so did Huarpa. By 500 AD, they faded into Wari's rise, but their foundation stayed, in architecture, in pottery forms, in sacred traditions, woven into Wari's fabric. Why remember Huarpa? They were the seed, before the empire bloomed. They shaped Peru's ancient story, with stone, soil, and sky, a culture that carved its place in history, quiet but lasting, in Andean winds and terraced hills. In northern Peru's valleys, the scan rose from 750 to 1375 AD. A realm of goldsmiths, of seafarers and traders, they built pyramids of adobe, vast and towering, under the Lambayeque sky. Their capital, Batan Grande, was a city of temples and tombs, where lords lay wrapped in gold masks, their eyes gleaming into eternity, symbols of power and afterlife. Sican artisans were masters, molding copper and gold into tumis, crowns, and goblets. Their art shone brighter than the sun they worshipped. They engineered canals that watered maize fields and spread their trade from Ecuador to Chile. On black and red ceramics they painted gods and winged beings, bridging earth and spirit, crafting beauty and belief as one. Religion ruled their lives. At the Huacaloro pyramid, priests gathered under stars, offering sacrifices to gods of sea and sky. They revered Nalamp, a mythical founder who sailed from afar, bringing knowledge and rule. Legends of Nalamp's journey echoed through ages, binding Scan identity to myth and might, in stone, gold, and tale. Yet, kingdoms crumble, and so did Sket. By 1375 AD, invasions and drought erased their power. The Chimu absorbed them, but Scan's legacy lingered, in metalwork, in myth, in architecture, that paved the way for Inca grandeur. Why remember Scare? They gilded Peru's history, in gold and lore etched forever in Andean sands. Before the Hittites, in Anatolia's heart, the Hatti reigned. From 2500 to 1700 BC, they built cities like Hattusa, with stone walls circling temples and palaces. Their land thrived on rivers and trade, copper and silver flowing through mountains and plains. The Hatti kings ruled with priestly might, offering to storm gods while scribes etched prayers on clay and stone alike. They spoke a vanished tongue, neither Indo-European nor Semitic, but rich with myth and rite. Neki priests danced in festivals of fire, calling rain and fertility. Their art bore bull motifs, symbols of sky and strength. They forged pacts and alliances, welcoming traders from afar. Ebony, gold, and lapis crossed their roads, linking Mesopotamia and beyond, while their tales seeped into later Hittite myths. But by 1700 BC, the Hittites came. They absorbed the Hatti lands, adopted their gods, and honored their ways. Though their name faded, their spirit did not. Hattusa became Hittite capital, and Hatti gods sat atop Hittite pantheons. Why remember the Hatti? They were Anatolia's first lords, who sowed seeds of empire and whose echoes still murmur in Turkey's windswept hills. In southern Africa's sun, where Limpopo's waters meet, rose Mapungubwe, the Kalanga's realm. From 1075 to 1220 AD, they built stone citadels on Mapungubwe Hill. Kings ruled from heights, golden scepters in hand, over valleys rich in cattle and crops. Ivory, glass beads, and Chinese porcelain flowed through their lands, linking them to distant shores via ancient Indian Ocean trade. Their artisans shaped gold, crafting the famed golden rhino, a symbol of royalty, power wrapped in grace. They carved stone walls and raised royal graves high above their people. Hierarchy thrived here, the king atop the hill, nobles on slopes below, commoners in plains beyond. They worshipped ancestors, held rites in sacred groves, and told stories under starlit skies of spirits and legacy. But by 1300 AD, Mapungubwe waned. Drought, trade shifts, and rival kingdoms rose. The capital crumbled, yet echoes passed on to Great Zimbabwe's towers and Shona kingdoms beyond. Why remember Mapungubwe? It crowned southern Africa's first kingdom, a cradle of kings and traders, where gold shimmered and power perched on stone. Its story still whispers through ruins and relics in Africa's golden heart. In the heart of North America, by rivers winding wide, the Mississippian culture rose from 800 to 1600 AD. Mound builders, they were called, but they were more than that. Cahokia stood tall, with Monk's Mound towering high, larger than Egypt's pyramids, a city of 20,000 souls. Plazas stretched wide, wooden palisades circled strong, and farmers tilled rich soil, growing maize, beans, squash, three sisters of life. Their leaders sat atop mounds, priests and chiefs alike. They wore copper plates, shell beads glinting bright, and led rites under the sun. Their cosmos spun on myths of the sky, earth, and watery depths. Trade spanned far. Great Lakes copper, Gulf's shells, and Rocky Mountain obsidian flowed through their hands. Art flourished on pottery. Shell carvings told tales of falcon warriors and serpent spirits. By 1500 AD, the mounds grew silent. Overhunting, drought, and shifting powers dimmed their flame. When Europeans came, the Mississippian world had splintered into tribes, Choctaw, Creek, Natchez, and others who carried echoes on. Why remember them? They shaped the land, raised cities of earth and sky, and crafted a culture rooted deep in river valleys and stars, where mounds still stand in silent watch. Long before emperors, before samurai swords gleamed, the Jomon culture thrived, from 14,000 to 300 BCE, across Japan's islands. Named for cord-marked pottery, their hands shaped clay, pressed ropes in wet earth, crafting art both simple and bold. Hunters and gatherers, they fished rivers, foraged forests, and built pit houses on ocean shores, where shells piled high and stories rippled in salt and wind. They carved figurines, dog with wide eyes, mysteries in clay, thought to bring health or guard against harm. Stone tools, lacquerware and jewelry of jade and bone spoke of skill and grace. Communities gathered, sharing rituals under cedar and pine, while deer and boar roamed free. Trade crossed seas, obsidian, shells, and amber traveled far. Their world pulsed with rhythm of tide, cycle of season, whisper of flame. By 300 BCE, as rice farming sailed in from distant shores, Shomon ways waned, giving rise to Yayoi dawn. Yet their spirit lingers, in Japan's soil and soul. Why remember Shomon? They wove the first threads of culture, craft, and life on Japan's ancient land. A people of clay and cord, of forest and sea, whose echoes still hum beneath cherry blossoms, and in the shards of pots left cradled by earth. Before pyramids rose, before Rome dreamed, the Indus Valley breathed. From 3300 to 1300 BCE, It flourished by rivers, Indus and Sarasvati's veins, Mohenjo-Daro, Harappa, cities of baked brick, of broad streets, of silent order. No kings carved in stone, no empires boasted loud, yet here was grace, granaries vast, baths grand, wells deep, and drainage smooth as thought itself. Their seals told tales of unicorns and bulls, script etched in mystery still unread today. They spun cotton, the world's first traded beads, lapis from Afghanistan, shell from distant shores. Artisans shaped toys, potters fired red clay, and bronze dancers stood poised and proud. A land where peace echoed, few weapons found, few battles scarred. A people of trade, of craft and calm, rooted in rhythm of flood and harvest. Why remember Indus? It shaped urban dreams, long before others dared. It whispered of balance, of cities clean and wise, of culture deep yet gentle and just. A civilization lost but never forgotten. Its streets still call, its seals still puzzle, and in the dust of Harappa, history's heart beats on. By 1300 BCE, the cities dimmed, their bricks crumbled perhaps to drought or shifting rivers' will. Before Athens dreamed, before Sparta marched, the Minoans danced on Crete's fertile shores. From 3000 to 1100 BCE, they built a world of color. Knossos rose, a labyrinth of halls, frescoes blooming with lilies and dolphins. They worshipped goddesses, bulls leapt in sport, and sailors carved waves, trading wine and oil, pottery and saffron. Across Aegean blue, their ships threading the Mediterranean silk. No fortresses stood tall, but palaces breathed open, with columns red and courtyards wide. Their script, Linear A, still holds its secrets, a language locked in clay. Art blossomed in every wall. Scenes of harvest, of rituals grand and priestesses crowned in grace and gold. Women held power, in myth and life, as snake goddesses and keepers of hearth. A culture of beauty, of balance and sea's song. Around 1450 BCE, earth quaked and ash fell. Thera's eruption roared, waves swept Crete's coast. Mycenaeans marched after, the Minoan light dimmed. Why remember Minoans? They were Europe's first breath of art and myth entwined. Their echoes shimmer still in Greek tales and Cretan stones. A civilization of grace, of sea wind and saffron, whose frescoes still dance on walls where time forgot. Before Maya pyramids, before Aztec empires, the Olmecs carved, from 1500 to 400 BCE. In Veracruz and Tabasco, they shaped Mesoamerica's dawn. Colossal heads rose, stone faces gazing timelessly, helmets sculpted, expressions serene yet fierce. They moved basalt boulders across rivers and swamps, with no wheels, only will and hands. San Lorenzo, La Venta, cities of plazas and mounds, where jaguars stalked gods. They birthed sacred games, rubber balls bouncing in courts of stone. They mapped stars, they farmed maize, and traded jade and obsidian. Their reach vast, their roots deep, gearlifts scratched in stone. Perhaps the America's first script, still whisper forgotten tales. The Olmec heart beat in myths of rain and maize, of jaguar men and sky serpents, symbols etched into masks and thrones, legacy laid for Maya and Aztec to rise. By 400 BCE, their centers crumbled, their voices quieted. But why remember Olmecs? They lit the torch, they laid the first stones. Their art, their myth, their vision of cosmos flowed into every culture after. A mother civilization whose shadow stretches through time and soil. Colossal heads still stare, silent sentinels of mystery, guardians of Mesoamerica's birth, where jaguars, men, and gods once danced as one. On the Horn of Africa, where the Red Sea touched the land, the Aksumite Empire rose. From 100 AD to 940 AD, it stood as a beacon, a bridge between Africa, Arabia, and beyond. In the city of Aksum, giant obelisks reached for the sky, marking tombs of kings, symbols of wealth and power. Traders from Egypt, India, and Rome brought their goods, but it was Aksum's coin that shone the brightest. Gold and silver, minted in Aksum's name, circulated across continents. The empire's reach stretched, from the shores of the Red Sea to the heart of Ethiopia. Their merchants sailed, carrying ivory, frankincense, and exotic goods, while the empire's heart pulsed with the rise of Christianity. By the 4th century, Aksum had embraced the faith, its king Ezana, becoming the first Christian monarch of the ancient world. Aksum's greatness wasn't just wealth, but the culture it fostered. Its scripts, the Gez alphabet, carved in stone, preserved the history, the language, the soul of a kingdom. Yet, like all empires, its time came to an end. By the 7th century, the empire began to fade, weakened by Islamic expansion and shifting trade routes. But Aksum's legacy lives on, carved in the stones of time, in the heart of Ethiopia. On the North African coast, where trade winds met ambition, Carthage rose, a Phoenician colony turned empire. Founded around 814 BCE, it grew into a naval power, with harbors carved in perfect circles, and fleets that ruled the Mediterranean. Carthage became a merchant kingdom, trading gold, silver, wine and tin, stretching from Spain to Sicily, its influence reaching deep into Africa and beyond. At the heart of Carthage stood its gods and temples. Baal-Hamon, Tanit, and rituals old as time guided their lives and politics. Their society was sharp, governed by merchants and nobles with markets always full and ships always sailing. But their greatest rival stood across the sea, Rome, young and rising, watching Carthage with envy and growing hunger. Then came Hannibal, one of history's finest generals. He crossed the Alps with elephants, striking fear into Rome's heart. Victory after victory followed, but Carthage lacked Rome's endurance. In the Punic Wars, Carthage fought with brilliance, but Rome fought with resolve. By 146 BCE, Carthage was burned to the ground, its walls torn down, its fields salted, its people scattered or slain. Why remember Carthage? Because it stood as a symbol of what trade, strategy, and resilience could build. Its legacy remains in the ruins near Tunis, in coins, scripts, and myths carried by conquerors. Carthage rose from the sea, challenged an empire, and though it fell, its story lives on, etched in fire and remembered in stone. In the heart of Southeast Asia, the Khmer Empire rose in power from the 9th to the 15th century AD. Centered in Angkor, they built cities of stone, where forests now reclaim walls. They tamed rivers with reservoirs, created canals that fed rice fields, and ruled over what is now Cambodia, Thailand, Laos, and parts of Vietnam. Khmer kings were god kings, divine rulers shaping earth and sky. Angkor Wat stood at its center, a temple of unmatched grandeur, dedicated first to Vishnu, later embraced by Buddhism. Its towers mirror mountains, its corridors echo with carvings of epic battles and heavenly dancers. Khmer artisans carved sandstone into living myth, into apsaras and deities, telling stories through stone with precision and soul. This was no ordinary kingdom, it was a sacred city of empires. The Khmer mastered architecture, hydrology, and diplomacy. They sent envoys to China, traded with India, and absorbed cultures without losing their own. At its height, Angkor was one of the largest cities on earth, fed by faith, rice, and vision. But greatness is never eternal. Monsoon failure, overexpansion, and foreign invasions began to pull Angkor down. By the 15th century, the capital shifted, and the jungle crept in. Angkor fell silent, its temples swallowed by roots. But the Khmer spirit remained. Why remember them? Because they turned stone into scripture, and cities into sacred texts. The Khmer Empire still breathes through carvings, ruins, and rhythm, a civilization of elegance and strength, etched forever into the soul of Cambodia. From the windswept steppes of Central Asia, the Huns thundered west, horsemen swift as shadows, archers born in the saddle. In the 4th century AD, they swept into Europe, disrupting empires, shattering borders. To the Romans, they were a storm with no center, a people without cities, without walls, but with unmatched speed and terror. Their legacy began with motion, fire, and fear. Nomadic by nature, the Huns lived on horseback, their lives tied to motion and war. They hunted, raided, and negotiated with blades. No written language of their own, no temples or towers, only the echo of hooves and stories told by enemies. They pushed the Goths into Roman lands, setting off migrations that helped crack the Roman West. The Huns didn't just fight, they changed the map of Europe. Then came Attila, called the Scourge of God, a leader both feared and admired. He united the Huns and led devastating campaigns into Roman territory. He crossed the Danube, stormed through Gaul, and even marched on Rome. But he turned back, never taking the eternal city. Some say it was diplomacy, others say divine fear. In life he shook empires, in death he became legend. Attila died in 453 AD, and with him the empire cracked. His sons quarreled, the unity crumbled. The Huns faded as fast as they had risen, leaving little behind. No palaces, no monuments, just scattered bones and terrified memories. Why remember the Huns? Because they were a force of nature, a living shockwave in history, who reshaped Europe with speed, fire, and fearless motion. Before the myths of Troy, before Homer sang of heroes, the Mycenaeans ruled. From 1600 to 1100 BCE, they rose in mainland Greece, building citadels of stone, walls so massive they were called Cyclopean. Mycenae, Tiryns, Pylos, cities of gold of warriors and kings, where lions guarded gates and thrones stood high above winding paths of power. They wrote in Linear B, an early Greek script, etched on clay tablets to count goods, record offerings, and manage palaces. The Mycenaeans were seafarers, trading with Egypt and the Levant, bringing back ivory, copper, and tales of foreign gods. Their world was ordered, hierarchical, led by warrior elites and priests who honored Zeus, Poseidon, and the old Minoan gods they inherited. They fought in chariots, with spears and bronze, buried their dead with gold masks, and sang of honor through silence. In myth, they were the sons of kings, who sailed to Troy for pride and glory. But around 1100 BCE, their world unraveled, palaces burned, trade collapsed, and the written word vanished. The reasons remain debated: war, drought, invasion, or unrest. Why remember the Mycenaeans? Because they were the roots of classical Greece. Their legends gave rise to Achilles and Agamemnon, to stories that shaped Western thought. Their ruins still stand, their masks still shine, and their echoes can be heard in every tale of glory, ruin, and the rise of civilization from stone and fire. High in the cloud forests of Peru, above steep cliffs and misted canyons, lived the Chachapoya, the warriors of the clouds. From around 900 AD to the time of the Inca conquest, they built stone cities on ridges, fortresses hidden in green. Their world was one of mystery, perched between sky and jungle, with homes of limestone, circular and strong, rising from the mountain mist. Their greatest city was Quelap, a fortress older than Machu Picchu, with walls towering 60 feet high and hundreds of circular dwellings inside. The Chachapoya weren't just builders, they were fierce, resisting Inca expansion for years. They fought in steep terrain, among clouds and shadows, and when finally conquered, they did not vanish. They became warriors within the Incan armies themselves. They buried their dead in cliffside tombs, hidden in caves far above the jungle floor. Sarcophagi shaped like human forms stood guard over the valleys, painted, sacred, and silent. Their art, their textiles, and their bone-filled tombs speak of a people deeply spiritual, rooted in nature and ancestry, yet elusive in the historical record. Why remember the Chachapoya? Because they thrived where few could live, in the clouds, among rain-soaked cliffs and forgotten stone. They carved a civilization in sky and silence, and though much is lost, their ruins remain, etched into mountaintops, hidden in forest mist, waiting for the world to look up and remember them. In the coastal heart of Vietnam, long before the spread of empires, there flourished the Sahun culture. From 1000 BC to 200 AD, they carved their place in history, a civilization tied to the sea, its ports, and its vibrant trade routes. The people of Sahun were seafarers, skilled in navigation and commerce, leaving behind a legacy of artifacts that tell the story of a prosperous culture. The Sahun built their settlements near rich coastal resources, with pottery, jewelry, and tools found in burial sites, showing a refined craftsmanship. Their tombs, shaped like urns, were filled with offerings, from gold to jade, and even items traded from faraway lands. These goods tell us of their far-reaching connections with other Southeast Asian cultures and even distant India and China. Pottery was their art, finely crafted, with intricate patterns and distinctive red, black, and cream designs. Ceremonial items, like bronze mirrors and bells, show their religious devotion, reflecting a belief in ancestral worship and life after death. The Sen Forner were also skilled in metallurgy, crafting bronze tools that would later influence the Champa kingdom. The culture's decline around 200 AD left behind a mystery, as their settlements vanished and their people dispersed. But the Sahun's legacy remained, in the artifacts buried beneath the earth, waiting for archaeologists to uncover them, and in the traditions they passed down to later generations. Today, Sahun artifacts are treasures, carefully preserved in museums, standing as a testament to a culture that thrived on the edge of the sea, whose people lived with art, trade, and spirituality, leaving behind their mark on the history of Vietnam.